Imagine discovering that two people invest the exact same amount of money for decades, yet one retires with hundreds of thousands of dollars more simply because they checked a different box on a form. Today, you're going to learn the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, why choosing the wrong one can quietly cost you a fortune, and how to know which one fits your life before it's too late. Jake was 24 years old, had just landed his first full-time job, and was finally making enough money to think beyond next month's rent. Like most people, he believed investing was simply about picking the right stocks. But one evening, while filling out paperwork from his employer, he noticed two strange names staring back at him: traditional IRA and Roth IRA. They sounded almost identical, yet everyone online argued passionately about which one was better. Some claimed the traditional IRA was the smartest move. Others insisted the Roth IRA was the greatest investment account ever created. Jake closed his laptop in frustration, convinced finance was designed to confuse normal people. That's when Bob appeared, carrying his tiny briefcase with his usual calm smile. "You're asking the wrong question," Bob said. "The real question isn't which account is better. It's which one lets you keep more money." Bob led Jake into a quiet library where two giant treasure chests stood side by side. Both looked identical, both promised years of investment growth, and both accepted the exact same amount of money every year. Jake couldn't understand why everyone treated them so differently. Bob pointed at the first chest labeled Traditional IRA and explained that every dollar placed inside this chest could reduce the taxes Jake paid today. It was like getting rewarded immediately for saving. Jake's eyes lit up. Saving money on taxes right now sounded incredible. But before he could celebrate, Bob pointed toward the second chest labeled Roth IRA. "This one gives you no tax break today," Bob explained, "but if you follow the rules, every dollar you earn inside this account can come out completely tax-free when you retire." Suddenly Jake realized these accounts weren't competing investments at all, they were two different tax strategies. Bob pulled out two identical $1 bills and placed one into each chest. "Imagine these dollars grow into $10 over many years," he said. "With the traditional IRA, the government lets you skip paying taxes on that first dollar today, but they'll come back later when you withdraw the money. With the Roth IRA, you pay taxes on the first dollar now, but when it grows into $10, every penny belongs to you." Jake paused. "So, with one account I pay taxes later, and with the other I pay taxes now?" Bob smiled. "Exactly." Jake thought the answer was obvious. Why wouldn't everyone just delay paying taxes? Bob grinned because he knew almost everyone asked that question first. He pulled out two calendars. The first represented today. The second represented retirement, 40 years later. "Here's what matters," Bob said. "Would you rather pay taxes when you're earning a smaller income, or when you're withdrawing much larger amounts in retirement?" Jake had never considered that. If he earned more money later in life, his tax rate could be higher. Suddenly delaying taxes didn't automatically sound like the best idea. To make it clearer, Bob wrote a simple example on a whiteboard. Jake invested $6,000 every year for decades until it eventually became $800,000. If that money sat inside a traditional IRA, taxes would likely be owed whenever it was withdrawn in retirement. If the same growth happened inside a Roth IRA, and all the rules were followed, that entire balance could potentially be withdrawn tax-free. Jake stared at the numbers. The difference wasn't how much the investments earned. The difference was how much he actually got to keep. Bob wasn't finished. He flipped the whiteboard over and wrote one sentence across it in giant letters: "Your future tax rate matters more than your favorite investment." Jake finally understood why people argued endlessly about these accounts. "Now," Bob said, "let me show you the hidden rules that surprise almost everyone, and why millions of people accidentally choose the wrong IRA for reasons they never even knew existed." The next morning, Bob took Jake to what looked like two identical racetracks. At the starting line, thousands of investors were cheering, convinced they had picked the winning path. But halfway through, one track stood several gates with locks, while the other had a different set of obstacles entirely. This, Bob said, is why choosing an IRA isn't just about taxes. Every account comes with rules, and if you don't know them, they can surprise you when you need your money the most. Jake walked toward the traditional IRA track first. Bob explained that contributing to a traditional IRA may reduce your taxable income today if you qualify, which means you could owe less in taxes this year. Jake liked that idea immediately. More money staying in his pocket sounded like a victory. But Bob pointed farther down the track where retirees were withdrawing money. Here's the catch, he said. When retirement comes, every withdrawal is generally taxed as ordinary income. Jake realized the tax bill hadn't disappeared, it had simply been postponed for decades. Then Bob guided him to the Roth IRA track. This path looked almost backward. There was no reward waiting at the starting line. Jake paid taxes before contributing, so there was no immediate deduction. It felt unfair at first. But farther ahead, the finish line was glowing brightly. Investors who had followed the rules were withdrawing years of investment growth without paying federal income tax on those qualified withdrawals. Bob smiled. One account rewards you today. The other rewards your future self. Jake frowned. If the Roth IRA sounds so amazing, why doesn't everyone use it? Bob reached into his briefcase and pulled out another piece of the puzzle. Because not everyone can contribute directly to a Roth IRA. He explained that people with higher incomes can run into contribution limits, while eligibility rules can change over time. Traditional IRAs also have rules, especially when it comes to whether contributions are tax-deductible if you're covered by a retirement plan at work. Jake laughed. As they continued walking, they reached another checkpoint marked time. Bob pointed to a giant clock counting down 5 years. The Roth IRA asks for patience, he explained. To enjoy all its tax-free benefits, you generally need to meet certain requirements, including holding the account long enough and reaching the qualifying age for withdrawals. Jake realized that retirement accounts weren't designed for quick wins. They were built for decades, not months. Bob then asked Jake a question that changed everything. How old are you? Jake answered, 24. Bob nodded. And do you expect to earn more money 20 or 30 years from now than you do today? Jake laughed. I hope so. Bob smiled. That's exactly why many younger workers often lean toward a Roth IRA. If you're in a relatively low tax bracket today and expect your income to grow over time, paying taxes now may cost less than paying them later. Jake finally understood that age wasn't the important factor. His future earning potential was. But Bob wasn't trying to convince Jake that Roth IRAs were always better. Instead, he pointed toward a successful business owner approaching retirement. She was earning far more than Jake and expected her income to fall after retiring. For someone like her, reducing taxes today with a traditional IRA could make far more sense. Jake suddenly saw the bigger picture. Two people could make opposite choices, and both could be making the smartest decision for their own situation. The library doors opened again, revealing dozens of investors arguing over which IRA was the best. Bob simply smiled and closed his briefcase. The best account, he said, isn't the one that wins debates. It's the one that lets you keep the most money after taxes. The room fell silent as everyone realized they'd been asking the wrong question all along. Jake thought he finally understood everything. Then Bob unfolded one final chart. And it revealed a mistake that quietly costs countless retirees thousands of dollars, even after they've picked the right IRA. Jake leaned closer as Bob spread the chart across the table. It wasn't filled with complicated graphs or confusing tax formulas. Instead, it showed the lives of two friends who both started investing at age 25. They each invested $500 every month, earned the exact same average return, and retired with nearly the same investment balance. Yet one ended retirement with far more spending money than the other. Jake couldn't believe it. They made the same investments, he said. How is that possible? Bob tapped the chart. Because retirement isn't about how much you have. It's about how much you get to keep. The first friend had chosen a traditional IRA. Every contribution reduced his taxes while he was working, which helped him save money throughout his career. But once retirement arrived, every withdrawal became part of his taxable income. The second friend chose a Roth IRA. She paid taxes before contributing, so she never received that upfront tax break. However, decades later, when her investments had grown into a substantial nest egg, her qualified withdrawals were completely tax-free. Jake finally saw why taxes could quietly reshape an entire retirement without changing a single investment. Bob then drew a simple balance scale. On one side, he wrote "Need tax savings today." On the other, "Want tax-free income tomorrow." He explained that neither side was heavier by default. If someone was struggling to pay bills and needed every tax break they could get today, a traditional IRA might provide valuable relief. But if someone could comfortably pay taxes now and expected to earn more in the future, a Roth IRA could become incredibly powerful over decades. The account itself wasn't magic. The strategy behind choosing it was. Jake looked around the room and noticed something interesting. The happiest retirees weren't the ones who had guessed perfectly about the future. They were the ones who had actually started investing early. Bob nodded as if he had read Jake's mind. "People spend years debating which IRA is perfect," he said. "Meanwhile, they lose the one thing they can never earn back: time. Every year they waited was another year their money wasn't compounding." Bob walked over to a small snowball resting on a hill. He gave it a gentle push. As it rolled downhill, it grew larger and larger until it became massive. "This is compound growth," he explained. "The earlier you start, the less money you often need to invest because your investments have more time to grow." Jake realized the biggest financial mistake wasn't choosing the wrong IRA. It was delaying the decision until someday, because someday has a habit of never arriving. As the sun began to set, Jake looked at both treasure chests one last time. They no longer seemed mysterious. They were simply tools, each designed for a different journey. He understood that a traditional IRA could be a smart choice for someone who wanted tax savings now and expected lower taxes later. He also understood that a Roth IRA could be a powerful choice for someone willing to pay taxes today in exchange for tax-free qualified withdrawals in retirement. The better account depended on the person standing in front of it. Bob picked up his tiny briefcase and smiled. "Money doesn't reward people who know everything," he said. "It rewards people who start before they're ready." Jake nodded, opened his investment account with confidence, and took the first step toward building a future that his older self would one day thank him for. As they walked away, Bob turned back with one final smile. The richest retirement isn't built by chasing perfect decisions. It's built by making good decisions early and letting time do the heavy lifting. Jake looked at the road ahead. For the first time, retirement didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt like a journey that had already begun.